Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk once again about short Fat Otaku AKA Dev, and yet another bad take that he has made. Admittedly, I was going to make this video earlier, but that worst take that Dev made with regards to communism being the lesser evil to MAGA, well, that I believe deserved greater prudence, and so I covered that take first. But with that said, Dev has also decided to take up the position that people who are anti-woke simply hate video games now, because they have grown out of liking them. And it's not really the fault of woke activists who happen to be involved in the creation of video games. Now yes, Dev did use some sophistry by claiming it's only a quote good chunk of the anti-woke crowd. The issue is of course that this doesn't actually mesh with reality. I'm not going to say there are zero grifters that are anti-woke, but the one person that I can think of that is anti-woke as well as being a grifter, an individual who I don't even really remember the name of, but is the one person of note that is both anti-woke and a grifter, well, I wouldn't exactly consider that person to have been a hardcore gamer in the first place. There are other individuals such as Sargon of Akkad who used to game a fair bit but don't too much anymore, but that has more to do with him having a full-on news company he has to run as well as a family to raise. And even then, I wouldn't say that he stopped liking video games so much as he doesn't have the time to actually sit down and be able to enjoy any of them anymore. And furthermore, I don't really see him critiquing wokeness in video games much these days, probably because he is focusing his attention on other things. So the point is, this little critique doesn't really apply to him either. There is, however, a more bigger picture counter I can provide to Dev's overall take here. And that being the only way his argument could really work is if the current cultural issues applied to games and only to games. Because if the bulk of the issue really was just people growing out of enjoying games, well, this is a phenomena that wouldn't apply to film or TV. But we are also seeing massive issues with film and TV, issues that can far more easily be explained by wokeness making the media worse, both by causing incompetent people to be hired due to their identity more than their actual skill, but also because wokeness demands that everything be turned into propaganda first and foremost above any other considerations. And when your number one priority is making something into being propaganda, well, that means that all other elements, such as storytelling or gameplay, will at best be given secondary priority and will suffer in quality as a direct result. And that end result will inevitably be inferior to the potential that it could have achieved had it not been made propaganda first and foremost. And technically, it is possible for a woke game to actually be good. Even with that consideration, though, it is still an inferior product to what could have been achieved by the exact same people had they actually prioritized storytelling and gameplay, instead of focusing on creating a piece of propaganda and just so happening to be competent enough overall to produce a good story or good gameplay, despite focusing on creating a piece of propaganda first and foremost. Now yes, I am focusing on video games as a media for the example I'm providing here, as to why I would argue that Dev is fundamentally incorrect. But the issues that the anti-woke crowd have are fairly consistent, and can by and large be applied to other forms of entertainment, not just video games. Which is to say that the idea that the anti-woke crowd are simply growing out of liking games and simply hate games now, and that in and of itself is the source of their criticisms of wokeness in gaming, is by and large factually wrong. And it is not the only piece of evidence I believe I should present here to why Dev's take is factually wrong either. Consider this for a moment. If Dev was correct, and the anti-woke crowd simply didn't like games anymore, well, that would mean that the market overall for games is shrinking, meaning that it is far less likely for there to be surprise mega hits. Except that's not what's going on. Oh sure, the AAA market is struggling, as well it should, many would argue. The indie market, however, has produced quite the string of massive successes recently. This year alone gave us Schedule 1, Expedition 33, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Dispatch, among others. The sheer scale of success of these games suggests that there is indeed a massive untapped market of gamers, of people that do actually want good games that aren't derivative woke propaganda slop. Variety is the spice of life, and one thing about propaganda is that it has a nasty habit of being very derivative and very repetitive. A third critique that I would bring up as to why Dev is fundamentally and factually wrong in his take has to be a bit more on the qualitative side of things, which is to say directly comparing the merits of modern woke games to what was typical of games, say, 20 years ago. For example, I personally have multiple videos that are simple direct comparisons of the quality of writing in, say, Dragon Age the Veilguard to older games such as Battlezone 98, or Heroes of the Pacific, or Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, or the original Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now yes, none of these games are RPGs. Of course, the fact that none of them are RPGs suggests they should have something of an inherent disadvantage when going up against a game from a genre where good storytelling is the bread and butter of said genre. Doubly so when you consider that it's from a specific franchise that was originally known for storytelling, and from a company that was legendary for its storytelling back in the day. Instead, the comparisons that I've provided in those videos are quite decisive, and fairly conclusively show that the older games quite simply have the better storytelling, thus demonstrating how much of an advantage not being woke actually is in that particular endeavor. Okay, that's one example, except for the fact that, Dragon Age the Veilguard was receiving awards for being the best game of the year last year, which in that context makes things even worse for wokeness. And once again, this is not a problem exclusive to gaming as a media. I can also readily provide examples by simply comparing the quality of the High Republic comics to Star Wars comics from the 90s and early 2000s. It is, unsurprisingly, once again, a night and day difference. And this is coming from a person who not only read all of the High Republic comics, but live streamed myself reading and critiquing all of those comics in real time. So you can't even use the excuse that I'm just cherry-picking bits of the High Republic. And on that subject, I will admit that there is, of course, High Republic The Blade, a 5-issue series that itself is actually worth a read. Overall, though, considering the 100+ issues of various High Republic series comic books, yeah, overall the High Republic is irredeemable garbage, and stands in very stark contrast to what we used to get from Star Wars comics. All of this is to say that Short Fat Otaku AKA Dev is factually wrong on this take.